Welcome to Office Hours. It is Office Hours for June 28th, 2024. And I'm really glad to be here with Emel and Umesh. And today we're going to be talking about making the leap from probably just getting started with PCB and hardware design into KiCAD, and then on into Altium, and then what are some best practices and things of that nature, what to help you get started. So anyway, I'm going to start the screen share here. Let's see. All right. All right. So I am Brandon Lewis. I'm a technology journalist. I've been in the space for about 15 years, and I'm really happy to be part of DevHeads. And we've got a couple of our regulars here with us today. Umesh, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, I'm Umesh. I've been building embedded software and hardware from past 10 years. Thank you.
Great. Emel?
Hi, I'm a hardware engineer, and I'm currently based in Dubai. Started designing since 2012 or so, and today we'll be talking about KiCAD and Altium.
Great. And you said when we were talking about this earlier, you said you were from the I camp, the KiCAD, the KiCAD.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. All right. So everybody else who's in the tool, doing the chat, or on LinkedIn, welcome. Glad to have you here. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in to LinkedIn or into Livestorm, or of course in the server, which is at discord.gg/devheads, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. So as we sort of mentioned at the top, this session is about taking the leap. So a lot of hardware engineers end up starting with something like KiCAD or KiCAD because it's free and it's open source and it's easy to get started because there's a lot of resources out there. Now, of course, there are places in your development journey where you're going to need something with a little bit more horsepower. And at that point, you've got to make the decision, are you going to go, you or your company maybe, are you going to go from KiCAD to Altium or another paid tool? And Altium is probably by far the most popular of the paid PCB design tools. So that's a logical place to go. And somebody who's actually made that jump is Emel. So we wanted to discuss a little bit about that, what the decision factors are, when to make the jump, if you need to make the jump. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So I've got a few questions that Emel and I went through before the session over the last few days, sort of just kicking back and forth some ideas. I'm going to pop in and out of some screen shares because he has a ton of knowledge and information and experience in this field. So I think that there's a lot you'll be able to take from this both today and moving forward. If you have questions, please let us know. You can ping me and try to jump in if it's relevant. I'll try and thread it into the discussion. Otherwise, we'll try and hold them for the end. But anyway, Emel, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Today is my last day of work. I'm taking a vacation for the summer. So nice. For 1 month it's gonna be. So after this talk, I'll be and I'm feeling very relaxed today. So
Good. No need to be uptight. Very good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to start off the conversation with just in general, how did you get started with KiCAD?
KiCAD, yeah. So so I am an electronics engineer. So back in university, when I was, I think, probably in my third year of graduation, the first tool that I ever used was DITTrace. I'm not sure how many people have heard of that, but somehow I found it and used it. And did the etching with the chemicals, FeCl3, and all that stuff. And that, of course, didn't work properly. And so, but anyway, I kept on doing other stuff. And during my internship, when I was doing my master's in 2010, 11, I was doing an internship at a company that they're making some controllers for some stuff like anything has to do with motor control. They were into that stuff, and they were using KiCAD. So that was the first time when I heard of KiCAD. And yeah, it was, I think, version 3 at that point. And yeah, that was the first time I heard of it, and I started using that one.
Was
Yeah.
was there any specific, you said you just heard of it, but was there any specific feature or reason that you chose to jump into KiCAD, or were you just like, hey, here's another option, I'm going to try it because what I'm using right now is a little limiting?
Yeah. So that was KiCAD at that time was, I think, one of the only more stable options available. There were others available. I don't know if people have heard, but there was a tool called GEDA, which was an open source EDA tool. Sometimes you still use the Gerber viewer from that software suite, and I'm not sure how stable that was, but it wasn't very user friendly, and like most of the tools about 10 years ago, the open source ones especially. And KiCAD was a bit more user friendly, and the others, they had the limitations. So DipTrace also had some limitations in terms of the size. It's also a paid tool, and I also tried Eagle at some point before it was acquired by Autodesk. I think it was version maybe 5 or 6. I can't remember. And yeah, I couldn't really got the hang of Eagle properly. So yeah.
So when you got into KiCAD, what did you at first realize were some of the advantages and then potential limitations of KiCAD itself?
So first one was the freedom that I got, so I could make up as big as PCB I wanted, as many layers as I wanted. It is 32. I'm not sure how much it is now, but 32 is absolutely more than you will ever need. So the highest I've made is, I think it was 8 layers board. So that was the first thing that I really loved about KiCAD, was like absolute freedom in terms of the size and complexity. It was up to you how big you want it. They gave you an open playground, and you do whatever you want. Yeah.
Great. So there comes a point, obviously, there comes a point in every designer's life when you realize that you need something that's a little bit more. Can you explain some of the projects you were working on, what you were, getting familiar with KiCAD, you were, advancing in your career at the same time. What types of designs were you working on? And then when were you like, okay, well, now it's time to consider potentially something else, and why?
Sure. So I think up till 2017 or 18, I was basically doing up to 4-layer boards. So they were not very complex, and even my skill set was not that high enough to go with a higher layer count, like 6 layers or 8 layers, because I didn't even know how to design the stack up and what things to consider at that time. So and I got a project where I had to make a carrier board for a IMX 6 based SOM system on module. So I didn't have to make the module itself, but just had to break out the interfaces onto the ports. It sounds simple enough, but with all the high-speed interfaces, you have to have a very tight spacing and a specific impedance matching and things that you need to take care of on, and how you can minimize the reflections and your EMI and all of that. So at that point, I felt KiCAD would be a bit lacking in that, in this kind of designs at that time. Of course, now things are a bit different. So at that time, I took a look at Altium, which was the only one I think that the company could afford. And there are other tools which are called from Cadence, the pads, or OrCAD. I think those are way out of the league. I am not sure how much they cost, but they cost a lot. And so that's how we started with Altium.
Great. I did want to bring up something that you mentioned as one of the reasons that one of the features of KiCAD that you really liked, which was the auto routing, right? That was one of the things that got you sort of hooked on it early on. Is that correct?
No, I would like to correct. I never used auto router ever. It was the yeah, it was the interactive router. Yeah, so in KiCAD, I think at version 3 it wasn't there, but I think in version 4 they introduced this interactive routing, which if you are routing your a trace, and there are a bunch of trace already there, and you can just push them aside and then route your trace. Before, you had to move all of them manually, and this was like one of the very nice features that was introduced in KiCAD. So there was a time in between when I was jumping between Altium and KiCAD, and I thought to myself, I would do sort of both of them, and I would make simpler designs in KiCAD and complex design in Altium. And I was really wrong with that, because that way I would never be an expert in none of them. So I thought, like, I have to make a decision: either I go full Altium or I go full KiCAD. And fortunately, I had freedom to go to Altium, so I chose, okay, let me just stick with Altium, and then I'll do all my designs in Altium.
I do want to mention real quick, you have I don't know if you're still doing this, but you got good enough with KiCAD that you decided that you were going to have a KiCAD service on Fiverr. Are you still doing this?
No, I stopped, I think, back in 2018 or 2019. But I'm really proud of this one, because I got like all 5-star reviews, and I got to do so many designs, and so many different projects. This wasn't when I started doing this, it wasn't for the money. It was just for the experience of the different projects that you do. So there were some of the DEF CON badges that I did. That was super fun. This skull thing, and it was also a quadcopter, so there were 4 motors attached on the corners. There were some automotive projects. There were some educational projects. There was also one project called Tutorbo, and that one was basically a small robot toy, like an educational toy. So fortunately, I just had to do the PCB, and the firmware was getting done by other stuff, other engineers. So, and also the mechanical was being done by some other engineers. But it was really fun collaborating with them, and yeah, it was a good time doing this. But I don't do it anymore.
Well, that's too bad. You need to take this down, man, because I was about to order a starter pack.
I put it on hold for now.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. So you did mention, okay, well, I was thinking at one point about potentially, maybe doing cheap designs in KiCAD or easy designs in KiCAD and more complex designs in Altium. Obviously, it's sort of jack of all trades, master of none. At what point did you just, become an Altium guy, and why?
So the last project I did in KiCAD was the most successful by far in KiCAD. So This was when I was working with this company called WakeCap, which designed IoT sensors for construction sites. And we integrated these sensors in the hard hats that the construction workers wear. And we used to track them around the site where they are, how much time they're spending there. And there are some more sensors in it. And that was like a fairly simple design, but a lot of engineering went into optimizing it and making it ready for mass production. So we probably made like maybe around 60,000 devices of them, and they are deployed. So it's not like you just made them and didn't do anything. They are in the field and in the Middle Eastern climate and still surviving. So that was one of the most designs that I'm really proud of. And after that, that was the last project I did in KiCAD, and then I moved to Altium completely.
So, firstly, what can you tell us about those 60,000 deployed devices? Can you tell us what they're doing and who they were made for, and et cetera? Or no, is this all off the record?
I'm not sure. If I start speaking about it, I'll just I think I'll spill a lot of beans. So
yeah, we'll be safe. We'll play it safe. We'll play it safe. Okay, fair enough. All right. So when you were moving into Altium, what were some of the first features of it that you took advantage of? What were some of the things that you noticed right off the bat? You're like, well, I have to have this, and it's not available in KiCAD.
At that time, it was the Constraint Manager. That was one of the biggest features that I was blown away by, is the amount of control that Altium gives you over your design. It is so easy. Yes, you spend some time in defining the rules of that you want certain nets to behave in a certain way, creating net classes and things like that. And then you assign rules that these net classes needs to have this width, and this net classes needs to have such and such clearance around it. And then when you start routing your PCB, your trace width just changes on the fly, and that's such a nice experience. So I just love that part.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna share a video here of Constraint Manager for those of you who are potentially not familiar with what Emel is referring to. This is it.
Designs, guaranteeing that every project detail aligns seamlessly to save time and prevent costly errors. Constraint Manager's standout feature is its user-friendly, tabular interface that lets you effortlessly browse, modify, and reuse constraint sets. This clarity turbocharges the design phase and makes transitions to production smoother. Constraint Manager's holistic approach to design validation bridges the gap between schematics and PCB layouts, ensuring consistent rule application. This results in a more efficient design process, reduced risk of discrepancies, and cost optimization, all leading to design excellence. Altium Designer's Constraint Manager is the key to electronic design precision and efficiency.
Well, there it is from the Altium spokesperson themselves.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, I'm David Abood. Today we're going to be talking about professional library.
Was that a good enough overview, you think, Emel, of Constraint Manager and what it does and how you're leveraging it?
Yeah, that sounds. But if you open up the dialog box of all the things that you can take control of, especially in the high speed, and in the high speed, one of the things is like you need to route your trace over a plane, and there should not be any break in the plane. There you can define a rule over there also that makes sure all of your traces are going over a single plane. So it's really helpful.
One of the other big things, and I remember this was, in the last few versions of KiCAD, they have made some really significant advances, to the point where people starting to take it seriously for professional designs, more so than they were in the very early days. And one of the reasons that people did not take KiCAD seriously was that it didn't support step files. And I have to imagine that that was a big contributing factor. If you've been using KiCAD for a while, that was a big contributing factor where you're like, okay, well, now I'm doing this professionally and I just don't have time to be messing around converting things from models into, different formats and stuff. Is that accurate, you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in version 4, there was 3D support, but it was all this format called WRL. It's a mesh format, so you could visualize your PCB in 3D in KiCAD in the 3D viewer, but there was no way to export it into a step file. So you had to use FreeCAD and use a plugin inside FreeCAD, and then you had to do a lot of export import around it. You could do it, and then you can get the step file that you send to your mechanical guy. And in Altium, everything was native. Everything was step from the get-go, and you just hit export and you get the PCB in step format. But I think later on, even they were switching in between. I think version 5 or version 6. They had support for both, and then I think now they are completely on the step format. So the 3D is become more easier.
Yes, for sure. So I think, and this was a really interesting part of our exchange earlier when I said, okay, so all in all, when you moved over into Altium Designer, do you consider it an upgrade, and why? So I'll let you answer that question for everybody. So is it an upgrade to move from KiCAD into Altium Designer?
So I'll say it this way. It was my answers are based on the experience from when I left KiCAD, and during that time, yes, it was an upgrade. I haven't driven it like hard, the latest versions of KiCAD, so I'm not sure how much of a gap is there between Altium and KiCAD at this point. I'm sure it's a bit less than before. So at that time, yes, it was an upgrade, and there were a lot of things you could just do with very few clicks versus it had to be done with a lot of clicks, or it was just, I mean, every tool has some weird ways of doing things. But yeah, in Altium, the more I used it, the more easier it felt.
That's great. One of the other features that you mentioned that I neglected to bring up was the BOM manager. Can you explain how often do you use that, and how in Altium Designer, and how important is it to your day-to-day development?
So it's really so how I do the PCB like production is, first we start with the schematics, and then we create the BOM, and then we order the parts for the BOM, and by the time the BOM parts are getting delivered to we work on the PCB design, and then we send all the files for production so that we don't waste time in procurement. So, and we can also find out any issues if some parts are not available. You could change it much more easier when you are doing the design stuff. So in Altium, there is a feature called Active BOM, in which you have to make this library in a certain way, and then it works really well. And you have to give the supplier links to each and every part that you're using, and it will pull the data from DigiKey, Mouser, or whoever your supplier is, and it will show you whether it is in stock, or is it if there is any issues with the part, or if it's obsolete, or if it is gone, if it's not recommended for new designs, or things like that. So those when you generate the BOM, at that time, okay, without sending out the BOM to your supplier, you just know this is not there, you better change it, and you don't have other issues as such.
Yep. Yeah, I think this may be part of the capability that Altium acquired when they got Octopart. Some of that's integrated here. And yeah, which is, if you're not familiar with Octopart, it's basically an inventory management sort of tool that you can use to source how much stock is in, how many components, how much inventory is available from multiple distributors. So anyway, that's an awesome feature, and something that, of course, you wouldn't expect to get from KiCAD.
I mean, if you have some plugin somehow that talks to it, so that's a good thing about KiCAD is the ability to write scripts and make plugins and things like that. But again, if your focus is PCB design, then you wouldn't make those plugins. You would just use those plugins. But there's always an option for that. So maybe someone can come up with that.
Yep. All right. Well, I moved into this different version of the slide so that I could keep popping back to the screen share without it being a big issue. So now you've lost the benefit of my beautiful transitions. But basically, at this point, let's get into what you're designing now with Altium Designer. So what is it that you're building like today? And what are you doing that you wouldn't have been able to do in KiCAD? I know you've touched on some of that, but in that particular design or those designs.
So I do now completely all the things in Altium. So regardless of the complexity, even if it's a small breakout board, I would make it in Altium, and all the complex stuff. Also, my recent project was a Jetson Xavier carrier board, and it was also designed in Altium, and I was really proud of the design. That it was the first one. We just got like 5 samples, and the board, like all the features, all the high speed worked in the first try. So that cut down the reiteration time, the revision time. And that's where Altium pays back in a way. So you don't waste your time in respinning your board. So, and also I like how Altium acquires companies and integrates those features into the product. Is one of this company I remember called Symbor. I think it's so basically they do some simulation side of things, but how they implement it in KiCAD is basically you define your layer stack up, and you tell Altium that I want a differential pair with a 90 ohm impedance, and it will calculate the trace spacing and the trace width for you directly, and will make it as a rule, and that you can apply to your USB traces. So whenever you start your USB trace, you don't have to define any. No, it is 90 ohm impedance trace. So that's where it increases your workflow really fast.
So when I asked you to compare, like sort of side by side, it was funny because you came up with a bunch of things that you did not like about Altium. So, and I guess, when you're paying for something, which I don't know if you're interested or willing to say how much you're paying for a license today, but when you are paying for something, you get to be a little bit nitpickier. I actually kicked them out onto its own slide, which is here. These are all the downers that Emel has about Altium today. Do you want to go through these? I like the last one.
Yeah. First one is scripting. So in Altium, the scripting is done in Delphi. I don't know how many people even realize Delphi is was a programming language. It is still a programming language, and I think the whole software Altium is written in Delphi. and they are making efforts to port it over to Python. I'm not sure how far they've reached, but when you code something, a modern tool with a legacy code, there are some lacking features, some lag or things like that. So yeah, scripting is there, but I don't know how many people use it today in Altium. So that's one. And yeah, the second one is like they love to move around stuff. So I never update my Altium version from when I'm during a project. So when I start a project, I just freeze my Altium version and I don't upgrade it until I have the PCBs in my hand, because they might have the same features there, but they might put it under some other button or under some other menu, and things like that. And it has so many features, and I think they did a survey that most of the Altium users just use like 20% of the features regularly, and others like you just use it once a blue moon. And that one feature that you want, and then you upgrade it and it's not there, and then you have to find it. But there's also one thing I like about Altium is like wherever you are and on whatever dialog you are, and if you just hover your mouse and you hit F1, it will pop up a web page with the help for that particular dialog box. So that's something that's really cool. And yeah, it has one time they had this feature in the step export in I think version 17 or 18. You could export everything, so including your traces, including your 3D files and everything. But then what they did is they removed part of that feature. So now when you export it, you don't get the traces. You just get the 3D parts, and you have the PCB and the substrate. You don't get the traces or the polygons anymore. And they moved it behind a paywall and put it and call it as the MCAD co-designer plugin, for which you need to also buy SolidWorks. So
Right.
that was a downer. So yeah.
It's like, oh, I just have to pay for this cheap plugin. Oh no, actually, you need to buy a license of the whole software as well.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, it has too many buttons, and the way you navigate is you hit. One good thing about it is like you can chain your keys. So like how you can open the file menu by hitting Alt F. So in this, you just have to press F, and then you have, when the menu opens up, you have all these menu items with underline on the alphabet, and you can press that alphabet to activate it. So you have to chain your commands. So for example, if you want to do a design check, it is TD and spacebar. If you want to do annotate your schematics, it's TAU, like that. So this way you have to, otherwise you have to go to, like, it's a very click heavy. I made a small macro pad with like 12 keys and a display, which I use for a lot of other stuff also. You can check out the link, and it's pretty nice project, nice like a maker style project.
Yeah, let me see if I can grab that. Pull it up. But keep going while I look for that.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, it is. Altium is expensive, and especially after, I don't know how the prices is gonna react after it is acquired by this new company called Renaissance. And we recently renewed it. They were going to hike the price, but you always negotiate. But so we paid the same price, but we renewed for 2 years. So at least for 2 years now, we won't be we locked in on the lower price, I think. So let's see how it goes after that. And yeah, the worst feature of Altium is the Times New Roman font. It's, I don't know how or why are they not changing it, but yeah, this is the first thing. Like I just go in and this is like so deep into Altium, like everywhere it is the same font. So and you go in preferences, you have to change the defaults for like 50 items to this new font. Good thing is you can save the preferences, so you don't have to do that every time. So I always change them to Courier New or any monospaced font.
That's
So,
great.
yeah.
And here's the macro pad that Emma was referring to. Yeah, keyboard 12 keys. So sort of makes things a little bit easier, right? Have you manufactured one of these?
I've 3D printed this, so this was all made in KiCAD.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah. So this was like the first version with a smaller display, but then I thought I need bigger display, so then I made a second version.
Awesome.
It's all based on
Wow.
Pi Pico. So yeah, this is the latest one, how it is. And you change the knob, it changes the key functions. So it changes the layer. So on top you see here like desktop. If you change, you rotate the knob, it's like an encoder.
Yeah.
Then you get a new set of shortcuts. So I have 3 pages for Altium. You can imagine.
Wow, this is great. How many of these have you made? And do your coworkers and friends ask you if they can get one?
Till now, I just have one of them. So I'm not sure how. Maybe they are using some other ones, or they are still using the keyboards, I guess. But yeah.
Very good. All right. Let's see. So I want to start getting into the home stretch a little bit here, which is all right. So if you had to make the switch today, which tool would you use right now, given your current skill set, and why?
So as long as I'm not paying for Altium, I would definitely use Altium. But the day I have to, I don't have a valid license, straight away I would move to KiCAD in a heartbeat. There's no, I don't think there is any other option out there.
Great. And if you had to pick one or the other, I guess, given the situation, right? All right, obviously here's a point at which it's like, don't even try in KiCAD, right? Start with, just do this with Altium. Like, what are those situations? Like if you're a developer and you're trying to figure out, should I spend this money, or what's going to be the most efficient use of time?
I think it depends. The argument comes down to time spent versus how much money you want to spend, or you can spend. But if you are designing maybe a server board, then probably getting Altium would be a better choice than KiCAD. But I think for people who are starting out or have a couple of years of experience, if you can do Altium, great. But if not, then KiCAD is also just fine. And I would suggest to first become a good engineer. The tool comes second. Like if you are a good layout person, then regardless of the tool that you're using, KiCAD or Altium, I think you'll be just fine. It will just take some effort, or of course, but yeah.
I want to see if Navdeep has any suggestions as to or thoughts about what he's used KiCAD for. If you want to drop that in the chat, we've been chatting over there. He says he's never used Altium. He's downloaded it, but I'd like to hear what some of the people in the audience have used it for. Nimesh, were you going to say something?
No, I think in my personal opinion, like in my journey, my first tool was ProTail 99 SE. So Altium was called as ProTail, and that was so that's 2011. Okay, and that's from the company that I work for, right? and from there I used Protel, and then upgrade to Altium, and then Altium only. Yeah, once I did switch to Eagle, and I remember that's a time when CalSoft owns Eagle, and then Eagle been bought by a couple of companies here and there, and then for some times, and then again I came back to Altium, and then it's just an Altium. So never there were no reason to change for me, so it's Altium.
We keep going through this question about co-pilots, and we've touched on it a couple of times. Emel, give me your thoughts on co-pilots today in PCB design.
Sure. So co-pilots, LLMs, you must know what you're using is and how it works. You should have like a faint idea of how it works. So LLMs are probabilistic. They basically guess the next word fundamentally. If you ask a question, they start they take in that and they guess the next word. What's the most probable word that's next? And it has its uses for it. And nowadays, people are pushing AI into everything, and it's like it is a solution looking for a problem at this point. I did try SnapMagic's Copilot just about 2 days ago, and I gave it a bit more a heavy task. If you give it like small tasks, like make a filter, which is just a resistor and capacitor, you would just do that yourself. So I asked it to make it like a ESP board with some accelerometer, a battery charger, and I told it, okay, that's the V in is 24 volts. So yeah, it did spit out something, but there were issues with like the schematic was not readable. All the ICs were all over the place. There was no coherence, and it connected the 24 volt line to an IC that has a maximum voltage of 7 volts. So yeah, if you made that, it would just blow it up. And yeah, some of the wires were off grid, and I agree it is in beta, so I don't want to hit it too hard, but yeah, I think maybe in a couple of more years, I'm not sure how fast it's gonna progress. So I think maybe till the next year, I think my job it won't be replaced, I hope.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's great. Any other emerging technologies? Anything else that either current practicing and experienced PCB designers should be aware of, or if you're getting new, it's like, don't miss this gravy train. Anything else that you're aware of?
So PCB design, in terms of like the new technologies, they are coming up mostly in substrates, some high-speed stuff, microwave related stuff. So they are pushing more and more data bandwidth through the PCBs. I think person who is just learning out needs to learn the fundamentals first and have them really, really grounded. And because those never change, Maxwell's equations are not going to change. So once you have a good idea of the fundamentals, and if you are inexperienced, I would recommend to do more designs as much as you can. I strongly believe in learning by doing things. So yeah, you make things, you're gonna make mistakes, but and try to make PCBs in different sectors. So you can try to make an automotive PCB, you can try to make a consumer PCB. If you're starting out, you won't be able to do military, but at least try to emulate something like that. So how a hardened PCB would look like. So those are the things I think you should be. And of course, there are some magazines. There are like online magazines also. Maybe follow Hackaday. There's Elector. You can look up all the tons of magazines and just try to read and see what new designs are being made and things like that. So even if you go and download older issues of those PCB, they have a ton of knowledge in them. Try to read application notes. Those are also a treasure of knowledge.
That's great. I did ask Emel when we were talking what he got started with, when he was making the move, and he mentioned Fahrenheit like so many other people. There's a Udemy course that is free. So if you're looking to make the jump from KiCAD into Altium Designer, if you are looking to get some basics down, this might be a good place for you to start. All you got to invest is your time. Well, Emel, thank you so much. I mean, this stuff is great because this is firsthand experience from you, from practicing design engineers. Is what DevEds is all about, right? Share our experience and help each other advance and grow more quickly than we'd otherwise be able to. So, any parting thoughts? Anything else that you want to warn people about or encourage people to do, or any lessons you've learned along the way?
Well, first, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to share my experience. So thank you for that. And I said it before also, I'll just reiterate it again, is focus on becoming a good engineer. The tool comes second. A chef can be a good cook. Once you become a good cook, you can cook with a small pan or a different resources. So yeah, focus on your learning rather than and then whichever tools fits your bill, just go ahead with that.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Syed mentions if you are trying to get started, Electronics for You in India is a good place. So more and more resources. Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
All right.
I was subscribed to that when I was in India. So yeah, it's a great magazine. Yeah.
Great. So here are Emel's Altium Downers. In case you want to add to it, you want to add to this list. Actually, I'm going to post this in the server and see if anybody else who's an Altium user has any fonts they prefer, what their favorite design tool font is. But here are a bunch of resources. Some of them I shared, some of them I didn't, but that we went through when speaking with Emel. So we'll post this up in the server, and you'll be able to take a look at those and access them at your leisure. And we're going to skip over the community questions this week. We're running short on time here, but next week is a big holiday in the States, so we're going to take next week off of office hours, and then we'll meet again on the 12th. However, we do have an engineering hour coming up this Sunday, which is going to be on clocks and timers, and Edison is going to be back going through clocking and timing, and that's going to be on the way to interrupts, and then Umesh is going to take over, dealing with multiple tasks and interrupts, and then eventually we'll make our way into OSs. Umesh, do you want to give a little bit of input on what you see as coming in the interrupt sessions in a few weeks from now?
So in interrupt, I think everybody knows who wants to, who wish to, or who work with microcontroller programming, like how interrupt is important, and especially in the ARM Cortex-M architecture, interrupts are fairly complex. NVIC controller, it has a dedicated controller, and there are a lot of things like priorities, priority grouping, sub priority, and stuff like that. So this is what we will be exploring, like how can we use interrupt in a way that could allow us to do multitasking. What I have seen very often is people try to use RTOS when that task can be easily done by interrupt. So they overkill the design, and they end up using, for simple, like two functions, two methods, maybe they write, and then they say, okay, I want to create two tasks and run two functions. So if it's a simple thing can be handled over interrupt, then I think that's the good design practice, and that's what we will be exploring.
Great. Thank you so much for that. So yeah, there's also a bunch of new kit a kit reviews coming out in Navadeep, and some of the others here, Abhijit, et cetera, have wrapped up some kit reviews. So we'll get that published as soon as we can. Then a bunch more demos are in the pipeline or published, so keep your eyes on that. Any suggestions on getting 1% better by next week? Any thoughts? Yeah, Emel, you're going to be on vacation, so you're going to have time to think about ways we can improve. What homework are you going to give us while you're out?
I'll think about it and keep you posted on Discord for sure. When I have anything, definitely.
Very good. All right. Anybody have anything for the community that they need or want to offer or that they need? Check the chat. All right. Well, thanks, guys, for bringing up a grain of sand. Thanks so much, Emel. I really appreciate your insight. And the next office hours is going to be on July 12th. So we've got a little bit of a hiatus here, and we look forward to seeing you then. Have a great weekend, everybody.